It started on a Friday evening, the kind where the soft glow of sunset painted the sky in streaks of orange and pink. Megan walked in, heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "Hey, Lucas," she said, dropping her leather handbag onto the kitchen counter. Her voice was breezy, almost too breezy, and it brushed past me without waiting for a response. "Hey," I replied, glancing up briefly. "Long day?" "Always," she muttered, pulling out a bottle of wine. She poured herself a glass, took a sip, and then disappeared upstairs before I could ask her about dinner. That was Megan lately, present but not really here. I sighed and returned to my work. At some point, I realized I needed Megan's calendar access to sync our schedules for a tax preparation client meeting next week. I grabbed her laptop from the counter and opened it, expecting to breeze through a quick task. Her calendar was neatly organized. Of course, Megan always was meticulous. But as I clicked to make an adjustment, an email notification popped up in the corner of the screen. Subject: excited for Saturday. From Alex. It was innocuous at first glance, but something about it made me pause. Alex was Megan's operations manager at work, a name she had mentioned in passing, but never with much emphasis. "He's all about efficiency," she had said once. But excited for Saturday? What was happening Saturday? The cursor hovered over the email, a moral dilemma unfolding in real time. I wasn't one to pry. I trusted Megan. But trust only works when there's no reason to doubt, and this email felt like a reason. The guilt was brief. I clicked. The contents were vague, but unsettling. "I've got the reservation set, and I'll make sure we don't run into anyone from work this time. Let's keep it just between us, like always." My heart clenched. It wasn't outright damning, but it wasn't innocent either. I closed the email, my mind spinning. What reservation? What had they been keeping just between us? Shaking off the sinking feeling, I clicked over to her expenses. Megan's job came with a corporate credit card, which she used regularly for client meetings and travel. A recent charge caught my attention. La Lumiere Bistro, $347.15, listed as client dinner. I knew that restaurant. It was upscale, intimate, and not exactly the kind of place Megan's company frequented for client meetings. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. The pieces didn't fit. Later that evening, Megan reappeared, dressed in her usual relaxed sweatpants and oversized hoodie, the wine glass now replaced with a cup of herbal tea. She leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. "Hey," I began casually, not taking my eyes off my laptop. "I noticed an expense for La Lumiere last week. Fancy place for a client dinner." "Huh?" Her fingers paused mid-swipe. "Oh yeah, it was for a big client we're trying to land. Alex and I were there with them," she said smoothly, meeting my eyes with a practiced nonchalance. I nodded, not pushing further, but my stomach churned. She hadn't mentioned any major client meetings recently, and the tone of that email replayed in my head like an echo I couldn't silence. The weekend came quickly. Megan spent most of Saturday morning upstairs, claiming she had to prepare for an upcoming HR presentation. I was in the living room with our boys, Caleb and Ethan, helping them build an elaborate Lego fortress. "Daddy, can we make it taller?" Caleb asked, balancing a bright yellow brick precariously on top. "Sure, but it needs a stronger base," I replied, glancing toward the stairs where Megan's voice drifted down. Her words caught my attention. "And the projections need to align with what we discussed last time. I'll finalize it before dinner." There was no one else upstairs. My hands froze over the Lego set as I realized she was rehearsing a conversation that didn't sound like a presentation for work at all. "Caleb, buddy, can you help Ethan with the walls?" I said, my tone steady despite the tension building in my chest. I crept toward the staircase, careful not to make a sound. Her voice became clearer as I ascended. "Saturday's perfect. I'll say I'm working late if anyone asks." My breath caught. "Yeah, I'll wear the dress you like. The blue one." She paused, then let out a soft laugh. "No, don't be ridiculous. Lucas doesn't suspect a thing." I stepped back, retreating silently before she could notice. My mind raced, the puzzle pieces snapping together into a picture I didn't want to see. The email, the expense, the presentation. Saturday. Alex. Megan wasn't preparing for a presentation. She was preparing for him. That night, as Megan lay next to me in bed, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened, I stared at the ceiling, my mind churning with 1,000 plans. Confrontation wouldn't work. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to be sure. Sunday morning arrived with the same slow rhythm it always did in our house. The boys were up early, as usual, their voices carrying down the hall as they debated over which cereal to have for breakfast. Megan was in the kitchen with them when I came down, her hair still wet from a shower. She looked normal. That was the most unsettling part. She poured milk into Caleb's bowl, laughed at something Ethan said, and kissed me on the cheek as I grabbed my coffee. "Morning," she said casually, her tone light and breezy. "Morning," I replied, my face an effortless mask of calm. If she noticed the tightness in my voice, she didn't show it. By now, I was certain of one thing. Megan had secrets. The email, the dinner receipt, the call rehearsals, they weren't isolated. This was a pattern I needed to map out entirely. After breakfast, while Megan took the boys to the park, I stayed behind, feigning a work deadline. The moment the door closed behind them, I sprang into action. I retrieved Megan's laptop from her bag, my hand steady despite the storm raging in my head. First, I installed spyware on her devices, a move I had never imagined myself taking. It felt invasive, but trust had already been shattered. If she was hiding something, I needed to see it all. The program would mirror her messages, emails, and activity directly to my phone. Then, I turned to her email account. She hadn't changed her password in years, a small mercy, and I scanned her inbox with precision. Her primary email looked clean at first glance, but a secondary account caught my attention. It was cleverly named, an account I had never seen before. The inbox was littered with messages from Alex. My stomach tightened as I opened the first one. Last week was incredible. I can't stop thinking about it, counting the days until next time. Hey! The second was worse. I booked the hotel for Saturday. Same place as before. Let me know if anything changes. The messages were as revealing as they were damning, painting a vivid picture of a long-running affair. They had a routine, a system. My jaw clenched as I scrolled further, taking screenshots of each email. Later that afternoon, I intercepted Megan's phone while she was in the shower. The spyware was already active, but I wanted to see what I could access directly. I opened her texts, scrolling past innocent conversations with friends and family, until I found the thread with Alex. Her tone with him was playful, flirtatious, a stark contrast to the cool distance she had with me. "Can't wait for Saturday," she had texted him the day before. "I've missed you." He had replied with a picture of himself. Nothing explicit, just him smiling in his car, but it was enough to churn my stomach. More texts followed, referencing business trips and client meetings, thinly veiled excuses for their time together. One stood out among the rest. "Cancun was perfect. I still dream about those sunsets with you." Cancun? I scrolled further, piecing together the dates. Last June, Megan had been on a work retreat for 4 days, claiming her team had rented a villa for brainstorming sessions. I had believed her without question. Now I knew better. I logged into our shared bank account and pulled up the transaction history for that month. There it was, a charge from a luxury resort in Cancun, under Megan's name. The amount was staggering, far more than her job would have covered. My stomach dropped as I realized where the money had come from. She had transferred nearly $5,000 from our savings account that same week. I stared at the screen, the weight of her betrayal hitting me anew. This wasn't just infidelity. This was theft, taking from our future, from our boys. My hands curled into fists, and I forced myself to breathe. I needed to stay calm. That evening, I sat with the boys as they played video games. Megan was upstairs, humming softly as she folded laundry. Caleb nudged my arm. "Dad, why do you look mad?" he asked, his innocent brown eyes wide with concern. "I'm not mad, buddy," I said quickly, ruffling his hair. "Just thinking about work stuff." Ethan piped up. "Mom says you work too much." My throat tightened, but I managed to chuckle. "Maybe she's right," I said, though my thoughts were elsewhere. I couldn't let them see the cracks. Whatever was happening between Megan and Alex, it was my job to shield Caleb and Ethan from the fallout. They didn't deserve to lose their sense of stability because of her lies. Megan was already in bed when I joined her that night. She had her phone in hand, scrolling through something with a faint smile on her lips. "What's so funny?" I asked casually, slipping under the covers. "Just a meme," she replied, tilting the screen away. "Anything interesting happen at work today?" I pressed. She shrugged. Same old, same old. Meetings, paperwork. You know how it is." Her tone was light, practiced, but I caught the flicker of unease in her eyes. She was hiding something, and she knew I was probing. But she didn't suspect how much I already knew. As she turned off her phone and rolled over, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed the evidence over and over, each piece fitting neatly into the larger puzzle. Cancun. Hotel bookings. Savings drained. Saturday. Megan thought she was being careful, but her trail was wide open now. The days following my discoveries were tense, but calculated. I had to play my part. The dutiful husband, the doting father, while Megan went about her routine as if nothing was wrong. My mind, however, never rested. Every word she said, every move she made, I cataloged in my head, searching for cracks in the facade she worked so hard to maintain. By Wednesday, Megan told me she would be working late on Thursday evening. "Team dinner," she said casually over breakfast. "Alex wants us to discuss the upcoming quarter strategies." Her tone was light, her posture relaxed, but the words hung heavy in the air. "Alex, team dinner." I nodded as though I believed her, but my plans were already in motion. Thursday evening, I made sure to leave work early, telling Megan I would be picking up takeout and spending time with the boys. As soon as she left, I dropped Caleb and Ethan off with my sister, Karen, under the pretense of a last-minute work obligation. "Sure, the boys can stay," Karen said, giving me a curious look. "Everything okay, Lucas?" "Yeah, elite. Just a hectic night. I'll pick them up in the morning." With that handled, I began the drive into downtown Austin. Traffic was slow, but that gave me time to think to plan my approach. Megan had said she would be at Riverside Grill, a restaurant frequently used by her team for casual meetings. But I had checked her calendar earlier. There was no team dinner listed. She was lying, and I was about to prove it. I parked 2 blocks away from the Riverside Grill and walked briskly to the entrance. Through the glass doors, I scanned the room, looking for Megan's familiar figure. She wasn't there. My jaw tightened, but I didn't panic. This was expected. I stepped aside, leaning casually against the restaurant's brick exterior as I called up the tracking app I'd installed on her phone. The little red dot on the screen told me she wasn't at Riverside Grill. She was a mile away at the Lux Hotel, one of Austin's most exclusive spots. Of course, I arrived at the Lux Hotel and parked discreetly, my heart pounding, but my mind razor-sharp. Inside, the lobby gleamed with polished marble floors and oversized chandeliers. Guests in elegant attire milled about, sipping drinks and laughing softly. I spotted Megan almost instantly, sitting at the corner of the bar. She was dressed in a sleek navy dress that hugged her figure, her hair styled to perfection. Next to her, leaning in closer than any colleague should, was Alex. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a self-assured smirk that made my blood boil. Their body language spoke volumes. Her hand grazed his arm as they laughed over something he said. He leaned toward her, his fingers brushing her shoulder in a way that was anything but professional. I ducked into the shadow of a pillar, pulling out my phone. A quick recording. 30 seconds was all I needed. As I angled the camera discreetly, a voice behind me nearly made me drop it. "Excuse me, are you filming something?" I turned quickly to face a young woman holding a large camera bag slung over her shoulder. Her dark hair was pulled back into a bun, and her wide-brimmed hat gave her a distinct artistic flair. No," I stammered, trying to compose myself. She raised an eyebrow, her gaze flicking toward the bar. "You know them?" "No," I lied quickly. "Just a misunderstanding." Her curiosity lingered for a moment, but she shrugged. "Well, if you're looking for a shot, you'll have competition. That influencer over there is filming everything tonight." She nodded toward a petite woman across the lobby, holding her phone aloft on a stabilizer. I recognized her face vaguely from social media, a local lifestyle influencer whose posts often went viral. Thanks, I muttered, already moving toward the exit. The next morning, I woke early, my laptop open before the sun rose. Megan had come home late, slipping into bed without a word. She didn't know I had seen everything. I searched through local social media accounts until I found the influencer's profile. It didn't take long. There was a video from the Lux Hotel lobby, a cheerful montage of her night. And in the background of one shot, clear as day, were Megan and Alex. He was leaning in to kiss her, his hand resting on her knee, while she smiled coyly. The timestamp matched her team dinner perfectly. I downloaded the video immediately, a cold satisfaction settling over me. This wasn't just circumstantial. This was proof. That evening, Megan seemed more relaxed than she had in weeks. She hummed softly as she prepared dinner, even offering to help Caleb with his math homework. "How was the team dinner?" I asked casually, stirring the pot of chili on the stove. "Good," she said without hesitation. "Productive." I nodded, watching her carefully. She didn't falter. Not once. But I wasn't fooled. Later, after the boys were in bed, I opened my laptop in the privacy of our home office. My thoughts turned to the woman I had met at the Lux Hotel, the one with the camera bag. Her voice echoed in my mind, and for the first time, I realized she might be someone worth knowing. If she was connected to this world, she might also know Alex, or Megan, or both. Her name came easily enough, Kimberly, and from what I was beginning to piece together, she was far more than just a photographer. The next morning, while Megan packed lunches for the boys, I hovered by the kitchen counter, sipping my coffee and scrolling through my phone. I wasn't checking emails or social media. Instead, I was staring at the Lux Hotel video for the 100th time, each frame burning deeper into my mind. "Are you dropping them off at school today?" Megan asked, her tone casual. "Yeah, I'll take them," I replied without looking up. "Great. I've got an early meeting," she said before turning back to slice an apple. Her voice didn't waver. If anything, she sounded relieved. She believed her lie from last night had gone unnoticed, that I had no idea she wasn't at any team dinner. But I did, and by the end of this, she would too. After dropping Caleb and Ethan off at school, I sat in my car in the parking lot, the engine idling as I debated my next move. Contacting Kimberly wasn't just a shot in the dark. It was a calculated risk. If she didn't already know about Alex's affair with Megan, this would blow everything wide open for her, too. I scrolled back through my browser history until I found her website. It was polished, professional, filled with her portfolio of stunning landscape and portrait photography. A small section about her personal life caught my attention. Based in Austin with my husband, Alex, and our golden retriever, Tucker. Husband. The word hit like a hammer. I wondered if she knew the kind of man she was married to. Judging by her cheerful blog posts and glowing mentions of their happy marriage, the answer was clear. She had no idea. I found her contact form and hesitated for only a moment before typing a brief but direct message. Subject: "We need to talk." Message: "Kimberly, my name is Lucas. I need to speak with you about Alex. It's important. I have evidence that I think you'll want to see. Please call me at your earliest convenience." Asterisk, asterisk, I included my phone number, hit send, and leaned back in my seat. My pulse raced, but I felt a strange sense of control. The ball was rolling now, and there was no turning back. Hours passed before my phone finally buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, but I answered immediately. "Hello, Lucas," a hesitant female voice. "This is Kimberly. You sent me a message about Alex." "Yes," I said, steadying my tone. "Thank you for calling. I know this might sound strange, but I need to meet with you in person. There's something you need to know about Alex and Megan." There was a pause, long enough for me to wonder if she might hang up. "Megan?" she asked finally. "Your wife?" "Yes." "What's going on?" She pressed, her voice sharp now. "What are you saying about Alex?" "I'd rather explain everything in person," I replied. "But I promise I have proof. This isn't just speculation." Another pause, then a sigh. "Fine. When and where?" We agreed to meet at a small cafe downtown that afternoon. As I ended the call, my grip on the phone tightened. She sounded skeptical, maybe even defensive, but at least she was willing to listen. Kimberly arrived exactly on time, walking into the cafe with her camera bag slung over one shoulder. She was tall, with a confident stride that didn't quite match the tension etched on her face. "Lucas?" she asked, spotting me at a corner table. I nodded and stood, motioning for her to sit. She did, setting her bag down carefully before folding her hands on the table. "All right," she said briskly. "I'm here. Talk." I didn't waste time. Pulling out my phone, I opened the Lux Hotel video and slid it across the table. Her expression shifted from confusion to shock as she watched. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes narrowing as the image of Alex and Megan embracing filled the screen. "That's Alex," she said slowly, as if the words were foreign. "And Megan," I added, "your husband and my wife." She didn't respond immediately, replaying the clip in silence. When she finally looked up, her face was pale. "How long has this been going on?" "Months," I said, pulling up the emails and receipts I had saved. "Maybe longer. I found these last week." I showed her the screenshots of their messages, the dinner reservations, the Cancun trip. With each piece of evidence, her composure cracked a little more. "That bastard," she whispered, shaking her head. I knew something felt off, but I didn't want to believe it. She glanced at me, her eyes narrowing. "Why are you showing me this? What do you want from me?" "Nothing," I said honestly, "but I think we both deserve the truth, and I think we can help each other get it." She leaned back in her chair, studying me carefully. "Help each other how?" "By working together," I said. "Pooling our evidence, making sure they can't wiggle out of this. They've been lying to both of us for God knows how long. It's time they face the consequences." Kimberly exhaled sharply, tapping her fingers against the table. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious." Her jaw tightened, and she nodded slowly. "All right, I'm in." Over the next hour, Kimberly shared details about Alex, his frequent business trips, his sudden late nights at the office, his constant excuses. She mentioned how he had been distant for months, brushing off her questions with charm and deflection. "He's done this before," she admitted quietly. "Once years ago. I thought it was a one-time mistake. He swore he'd never do it again." I frowned. "How did you find out?" "I didn't. I caught him red-handed," she said bitterly. "I should have left then, but I didn't." Her revelation only strengthened my resolve. Alex wasn't just a cheater. He was a repeat offender, someone who had no qualms about betraying the people closest to him. "Then let's make sure this time he pays for it," I said firmly. Kimberly nodded, her expression hardening. "Damn, right we will." In that moment, we became allies, not just in revenge, but in uncovering the truth. The idea for the Florida trip came to me one evening as I was sitting in the living room, pretending to watch television while Megan scrolled through her phone across the room. She was angled away from me, her fingers moving swiftly across the screen, probably texting Alex. It was perfect. A family vacation would allow me to position myself as the unsuspecting husband while keeping her off balance, preventing her from concocting new lies to cover her tracks. More importantly, it would buy me time to finalize my preparations with Kimberly and gather more evidence. "Megan," I said casually the next morning over breakfast, "I was thinking we should take a trip with the boys. It's been a while since we had a proper family vacation." She looked up from her coffee, surprised. "A vacation? Now? Why not?" I said, smiling. "Work's been stressful for both of us. The boys deserve some fun, and so do we. I was thinking Florida, maybe a beach weekend." Her hesitation was brief, but I caught the flicker of doubt in her eyes. "That sounds nice," she said, finally nodding. "When were you thinking?" "Next weekend," I said. "I'll take care of the planning. You won't have to do a thing." She smiled, and for a moment, I wondered if she actually believed the act. "All right," she said. "Florida it is." By Friday afternoon, we were on the road, heading for a small beachside resort I had booked just outside Tampa. Caleb and Ethan were in the back seat, eagerly chatting about swimming and sandcastles, while Megan leaned against the window, gazing out at the passing scenery. The trip itself was uneventful, filled with the kind of small talk that felt like echoes of better days. I kept my tone light, cracking jokes with the boys and asking Megan about her latest work projects. She answered distractedly, her phone never far from her hand. The first evening at the resort was picture perfect, or at least it appeared that way. After dinner at a seafood restaurant overlooking the ocean, we returned to our suite. The boys were exhausted from the drive and went to bed almost immediately, leaving Megan and me alone on the balcony. "You've been quiet tonight," I said, handing her a glass of wine. "Just tired," she replied, sipping carefully. "Anything on your mind?" She shook her head, her smile faint but distant. "Nothing important." Liar. The next morning, while Megan took the boys down to the pool, I stayed behind in the room, pretending to catch up on some work emails. As soon as they were gone, I searched through her bag, careful not to disturb anything too noticeably. That was when I found it. Tucked into a side pocket was a small, velvet jewelry box. My breath caught as I opened it, revealing a delicate gold bracelet. Inscribed on the inside of the band were the words, "To my soulmate." The rage that burned through me was cold and sharp, but I forced myself to stay calm. I took a picture of the bracelet and its inscription, then placed it back exactly as I'd found it. Later that afternoon, Megan excused herself, claiming she needed to make a quick work call. I watched her leave the suite, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. I followed her at a distance, careful not to be seen. She walked to a secluded spot near the beach, where she leaned against a palm tree and dialed a number. I ducked behind a row of bushes, pulling out my phone to record. "I miss you too," she was saying, her voice low and soft. "It's only a couple of days. I'll see you when we get back." There was a pause as whoever was on the other end spoke. "Alex, without a doubt." "Of course I brought it," she continued, her tone playful. "I'm wearing it tonight." She laughed, a sound that made my stomach churn. "I love you too. Talk soon." She ended the call and slipped her phone into her pocket, turning back toward the resort. I stayed hidden until she was out of sight, then stopped the recording and played it back to confirm I had captured every word. That evening, while Megan and the boys played a board game in the living room of our suite, I stepped onto the balcony to call Kimberly. "I found something," I said without preamble. "What is it?" she asked. "A bracelet," I replied, engraved with the words, "To my soulmate." He gave it to her. She let out a low whistle. "Subtle." "There's more," I added, recounting the phone call I had recorded. "Good work," Kimberly said after a pause. "We're building quite the case here. Have you posted anything yet?" I asked. "Not yet," she said. "I've been crafting a few subtle posts, things that will make people start asking questions without outright saying anything." "Good," I said. "Let's keep the pressure building. By the time we're ready to confront them, they won't have anywhere to hide." The trip ended with Megan none the wiser, her lies intact and her secrets still buried, at least in her mind. But for me, the pieces were coming together, each one sharper and more damning than the last. After returning from Florida, I had a renewed sense of purpose. The bracelet, the phone call, the lies, it all reinforced what I already knew. Megan wasn't just betraying me. She was throwing away everything we'd built for some fleeting fantasy with Alex. Kimberly and I had been in constant contact since I got back. She had suggested the idea of luring Alex and Megan into a public confrontation, and I had agreed immediately. The confrontation wasn't just about catching them in the act. It was about ensuring their betrayal was undeniable, not only to us, but to anyone they might try to fool. The plan was meticulous, every detail calculated. Kimberly had an art gallery opening coming up, or so she told Alex. The event was entirely fabricated, a trap designed to draw both Alex and Megan out into the open. The following week, Megan announced during breakfast that she'd be working late on Thursday. "We've got a big presentation coming up," she said, sipping her coffee. "I'll probably be at the office until 9. "Anything exciting?" I asked, feigning interest. "Not really," she replied, shrugging. "Just the usual HR stuff?" She didn't even flinch as she lied. I nodded, masking my disgust with a tight smile. "Well, don't work too hard." That same day, I reached out to the private investigator Kimberly had recommended, a man named Eric who specialized in cases like ours. I provided him with all the details: Megan's routine, the fake gallery opening, the time and location. "She won't see it coming," Eric assured me. On Thursday evening, Kimberly called to confirm Alex's attendance. "He took the bait," she said. He thinks I'm showcasing my latest work at a gallery downtown. Said he'll swing by after work, but I know what he really means. He's planning to meet Megan there. Perfect, I said. Let's make sure everything is ready. Lucas, she said, her tone softening. Are you sure you're ready for this? I paused for a moment. Ready as I'll ever be. That night, Megan left the house just after 6, dressed in the same navy dress she'd worn to the Lux Hotel. She kissed Caleb and Ethan on the cheek, offered me a distracted goodbye, and was gone. I waited until her car disappeared down the street before calling Eric. She's on her way, I said. Got it, he replied. I'll keep you updated. An hour later, I arrived at the gallery, a sleek building nestled in the heart of downtown. Kimberly met me at the entrance, her expression grim but resolute. They're both inside, she said. Eric's already set up. He's got a camera on them from the second floor. Good, I said, glancing through the glass doors. Inside, Megan and Alex stood near the back, talking quietly. She was smiling up at him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. They look comfortable, I muttered bitterly. Kimberly nodded. Too comfortable. We waited until the moment was right. As guests mingled and admired the non-existent art, Kimberly and I approached the bar, positioning ourselves a few feet away from Alex and Megan. Ready? She whispered. Let's do it, I said. Kimberly stepped forward first, her voice loud and clear. Alex, he turned, his face draining of color as he saw her. Kimberly, what are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, she said, her tone icy. But I already know the answer. Megan froze, her eyes darting between me and Kimberly. Lucas, she stammered. What's going on? You tell me, Megan, I said, pulling out my phone. Care to explain what you're doing here with him? This isn't what it looks like, she began, her voice trembling. Don't bother lying, Kimberly interjected. We've been watching you both for months. Alex tried to speak, but I cut him off. Save it, Alex. We've got everything, emails, texts, videos. Hell, we even have footage from the Lux Hotel. Did you think you could keep this hidden forever? Megan's face turned pale, her composure cracking under the weight of the confrontation. Lucas, please, let me explain. No, I said sharply. I'm done listening to your lies. You've already said enough. Eric joined us moments later, his presence adding an air of finality to the scene. They're all yours, he said quietly, handing me a USB drive. Everything you need is on here. Kimberly stepped closer to Alex, her voice low but firm. This is over. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm taking everything. I hope she was worth it. Alex opened his mouth to respond, but Kimberly had already turned away. I followed suit, leaving Megan standing there, her face a mixture of shock and horror. She had nothing left to say. As Kimberly and I exited the gallery, I felt an odd sense of calm wash over me. The confrontation had been brutal, but it was necessary. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. Lucas, Kimberly said as we walked to our cars. Yeah, you did good tonight. So did you, I replied. We shared a brief, understanding nod before parting ways. The night air outside the gallery felt colder than it should have, slicing through my jacket as I stood just off to the side of the building, phone in hand. Eric had confirmed earlier that the recording equipment was in place, ensuring everything that was about to happen would be documented. Kimberly had stepped back inside to mingle for the final act. I stayed in the shadows for a moment longer, steadying my nerves. This wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about precision, about making sure Megan and Alex couldn't deny, deflect, or manipulate their way out of what was coming. With a deep breath, I entered the gallery. The crowd had thinned slightly, leaving a small group clustered near the bar where Alex and Megan still stood. Kimberly caught my eye from across the room and gave a subtle nod. It was time. Alex, Kimberly called out, her voice slicing through the quiet hum of conversation. I didn't realize you were such an art enthusiast. Alex turned, his expression shifting from casual confidence to immediate discomfort. Megan, who had been laughing at something he said, froze mid-smile. Kimberly, Alex began, his tone cautious. I thought you said you weren't coming tonight. Why wouldn't I come to my own event? She shot back, stepping closer. Her voice carried the sharp edge of a blade, and heads were already starting to turn. Megan's eyes darted to me as I emerged from the crowd, walking deliberately toward them. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, her face paling as if the floor beneath her had just vanished. "Lucas," she stammered. What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" I repeated, my voice calm, almost amused. "That's a funny question coming from you, Megan. Shouldn't I be asking what you're doing here?" The room went quiet. Conversations died, replaced by murmurs and shifting glances as more people tuned into the unfolding drama. "Megan," Kimberly said, turning her attention to my wife. "Care to explain what you're doing here with my husband?" It's not what it looks like," Megan stuttered, her words faltering as her face flushed a deep crimson. "Oh, it's exactly what it looks like," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. "And just in case anyone doubts that, let me clear it up." I tapped the screen and began playing the audio recording I had captured during our Florida trip. Megan's voice, unmistakable and clear, filled the room. "I miss you too. It's only a couple of days. I'll see you when we get back." There was a collective gasp from the few onlookers close enough to hear. Megan's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with panic. "Lucas, stop," she began, but I raised a hand to silence her. "No, Megan," I said, my voice sharp. "You don't get to talk right now." I turned the screen to Alex, showing him the picture of the bracelet he'd given Megan, the one engraved with "To my soulmate." His face went slack, and for the first time, he looked genuinely rattled. "This looks familiar, doesn't it, Alex?" I said coldly. "Or do you buy so many engraved bracelets that you've lost track?" Kimberly stepped in then, her voice icy. "You've been lying to me for months," she said, glaring at Alex. "To my face, to everyone. How many times did you sneak off with her while I thought you were working?" Alex raised his hands defensively, his eyes darting between Kimberly and Megan. This isn't what you think," he said, his voice rising slightly in desperation. "Really?" Kimberly snapped. "Then explain the Lux Hotel. Explain Cancun. Explain this entire charade." "I told you this would happen," Alex said suddenly, his voice sharper now as he turned to Megan. "I warned you that sneaking around like this would blow up in our faces. But you just couldn't stay away, could you?" Megan's head whipped around to face him, her expression a mix of shock and fury. "Are you seriously trying to pin this on me?" she hissed. "You're the one who wouldn't let it go." Alex shot back. "You're the one who pushed for this." "Oh, please," Megan snapped, her voice trembling with anger. "You're the one who started this. You pursued me." The crowd around us was visibly enthralled now, whispers rippling through the room as Megan and Alex's bickering escalated. "This wasn't supposed to be serious," Alex said, throwing his hands up in exasperation. "It was just supposed to be fun. You're the one who—" "Fun?" Megan cut him off, her voice rising. "You told me you loved me, and you believed that?" Alex retorted, his tone dripping with incredulity. Kimberly and I exchanged a glance. Their entire relationship was unraveling right before us, each accusation cutting deeper than the last. By the time I stepped forward again, Megan and Alex had turned their fury on each other, seemingly forgetting the audience around them. "That's enough," I said loudly, my voice silencing them both. "This isn't about whose fault it is. It's about the fact that you lied. To both of us. To everyone." I gestured toward Eric, who was standing quietly near the back of the room with his equipment. "And just so we're clear, we've got every word of this recorded. Every lie, every excuse. There's no wriggling out of this." Megan's shoulders slumped, her face crumpling as she realized the full extent of what was happening. "Lucas, please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can we talk about this? Just the two of us." "No, Megan," I said firmly. "We're way past that. You made your choices. Now it's time to live with the consequences." As Kimberly and I walked out of the gallery together, leaving the chaos behind us, I felt an odd sense of relief. For months, the weight of their betrayal had consumed me. But now, with the truth laid bare for everyone to see, that weight was gone. "They're finished," Kimberly said quietly as we reached the street. "Yeah," I replied. "And this is just the beginning." The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. Megan and Alex had been exposed, their lies laid bare for all to see. Now, it was time to take the final steps to reclaim what they had tried to take from us. The days following the gallery confrontation were a whirlwind of action. Megan didn't come home that night. She sent me a message instead, a pitiful string of words that alternated between denial and desperation. "Lucas, please, we need to talk. I never wanted this to happen. You have to believe me." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Claire. I laid out everything: the emails, the texts, the video footage, and the recording from the Florida trip. "This is airtight," Claire said, her tone brisk as she reviewed the evidence. "She has no leverage here. With this much proof, you'll get the settlement you want in primary custody of your kids." "That's all I care about," I said. "Caleb and Ethan deserve better than this." Claire nodded. "Then let's get to work." The divorce papers were delivered to Megan later that week. She didn't take it well. I was at home when she showed up unannounced, her car screeching to a halt in the driveway. The boys were at school, thankfully, sparing them the scene that followed. "Lucas!" she shouted, pounding on the door. I opened it reluctantly, leaning against the frame as I met her wild eyes. "What do you want, Megan?" "You can't do this," she said, her voice trembling. "You can't just throw everything away." "Throw everything away?" I repeated, incredulous. "You're the one who did that the moment you started sneaking around with Alex." "It wasn't like that," she insisted, her tone shifting to pleading. "It wasn't serious. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I said, my voice rising. "Cancun wasn't a mistake, Megan. Months of lies weren't a mistake. You don't get to rewrite history just because you got caught." She faltered, her hands shaking. "I didn't mean to hurt you, or the boys." "But you did," I said coldly. "And now you have to face the consequences." The court proceedings were swift and efficient, thanks to the overwhelming evidence Claire had prepared. Megan barely put up a fight, likely realizing that any resistance would only make things worse for her. The judge reviewed the case with an almost clinical detachment, awarding me full custody of Caleb and Ethan. Megan's infidelity, combined with her lack of transparency, made her position untenable. When the ruling was announced, Megan's face crumpled, but I felt no sympathy. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about protecting my family. The settlement was equally decisive. I kept the house, ensuring the boys wouldn't have to endure another upheaval. Megan was ordered to pay child support, a figure that reflected both her income and her role in destabilizing our family. Meanwhile, Alex's world was crumbling just as quickly. Kimberly had filed for divorce the day after the gallery event, armed with her own mountain of evidence. She was ruthless in her demands, and Alex, now embroiled in scandal, had little room to maneuver. Word of his affair had reached his workplace, thanks to Kimberly's strategic social media posts. The company couldn't afford the backlash, and Alex was quietly let go. In the weeks that followed, life began to settle into a new rhythm. The boys adjusted quickly, their resilience a constant source of amazement to me. We turned the family home into a place of healing, filling it with laughter and warmth instead of secrets and lies. One evening, as I helped Caleb with his science project, my phone buzzed with a message from an old college friend, Emily. "Hey, Lucas, I heard about everything. Just wanted to check in and see how you're holding up." Emily and I had lost touch over the years, but her message felt like a lifeline. We started talking regularly, our conversations easy and natural. She became a source of comfort, a reminder that life didn't have to end with betrayal. As for Megan, her life spiraled in the opposite direction. The fallout from the divorce left her isolated, her reputation in tatters. Mutual friends distanced themselves, unwilling to align with someone so thoroughly disgraced. She moved into a small apartment across town, her visits with Caleb and Ethan strained and infrequent. The boys seemed indifferent, their bond with her eroded by months of deception. I didn't discourage their relationship. I wanted them to make their own choices, but it was clear they no longer saw her as the pillar she once pretended to be. Kimberly thrived in the aftermath, channeling her pain into her photography. She began a series titled Resilience, featuring powerful images that told stories of betrayal, strength, and recovery. The project gained widespread attention, solidifying her reputation as an artist and advocate. We stayed in touch, bound by the shared experience of dismantling the lies that had entangled our lives.